Hi, I'm Nicola McKenzie, founder, mortgage advisor and insurance specialist here at DM Mortgages. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking to you about property deposits and helping you to avoid commonly made mistakes. So to find out more, stay tuned. Now, before we get into the detail of today's video, make sure that if you enjoy the content, you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss any future uploads. Now, here at DM Mortgages, we do not monetize this channel to give you guys the best viewing experience. So in return, to show your support when the time comes to look at your mortgage or remortgage options, then make sure that you head over to our website, which is dm.mortgage. And then you can book in for a free of charge mortgage appointment to look at your mortgage options with a fully qualified member of our mortgage advice team. Now, this video is part of a whole series of videos that's dedicated to helping you to prepare to buy a property and specifically looking at property deposits. So please make sure that you check out the rest of the videos in this playlist. Now, I'm going to start by saying the majority of the mistakes I'm mentioning in this video are applicable to if you're buying a property using a mortgage, okay? Now, when you buy a property with or without a mortgage, in actual fact, your deposit cannot just come from anywhere, okay? You do need to evidence where your deposit is coming from, the origin, the source of those funds, because banks and solicitors have, especially in recent years, a big emphasis on making sure that they're doing what they can to mitigate money laundering. And regulators are very focused on ensuring that deposits are coming from legitimate sources when people buy properties. Not just that, but where we're talking about where a mortgage is involved, again, the lender criteria, so depending on which bank you are applying to for that mortgage, it may not permit your source of deposit even if you are using funds that are from a legitimate source. For a variety of reasons, some banks will not accept deposits from all sorts of different sources that you as the buyer may have thought was not an issue, but some lenders do have an issue with it. And that's why it's really important when you're buying a property that you get advice from us as specialists. But what I'm going to do in today's video is just highlight some of the common issues that we tend to see that lenders have when it comes to deposits. Now, the first mistake that I want to help you to try and avoid is when you start looking at properties and you have an offer accepted, at that point, the next step would be to apply for a mortgage. Now, sometimes we have clients that have an offer accepted on a property, they come to us to apply for a mortgage, and then they tell us that they've not yet saved up all of their deposit. Now, that is not a position that I want, again, any of you viewers to find yourselves in. It's stressful. It's also not accepted by some lenders, so you should evidence that you have the full amount of deposit available when you wish to apply for that mortgage. So my advice here is to make sure that when you've had an offer accepted, and you're intending to apply for that mortgage, that you can demonstrate that you've got all of those funds, deposit funds available. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean if you're getting a gift from a parent, they have to transfer the money to you. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about here is just making sure that you've got all of the funds readily available and ready to go, because some banks won't actually approve a mortgage unless you can demonstrate you've got all of the money in the bank. Us as brokers, when we're doing our due diligence, because again, we're regulated, we've got certain regulations and rules we have to follow. We need to see bank statements right from the get-go that you've got all of that deposit available. So it's important that you get guidance, but like I say, just don't put yourself through unnecessary stress and pressure by not having that deposit at the point you've had an offer accepted. Now, another common mistake that I see people make is having saved up their deposit, but then forgetting about their fees and then having to take a large chunk of money out of their deposit to cover fees. And again, this is another situation that I've seen people in that leaves them stressed, under a lot of pressure, and again, it's just best to avoid it. Now, another fee that a lot of the time people overlook is stamp duty. Often we meet people that think they don't have to pay stamp duty or they've miscalculated it. And again, when they come to apply for the mortgage, it's become aware that they're now short on their deposit. So to avoid this mistake, again, make sure that you've got good quality advice from us before you reserve properties. Also, make sure that you check what your stamp duty position is, and you can do this by using a simple calculator on the government website. There's also even a stamp duty helpline that you can call as well. Your conveyancer can help you here as well. We can help you to a certain extent. But it's just important to make sure that you have calculated all of your fees. I mean, at best, even if you're looking at paying no stamp duty, solicitor costs, surveys, valuation fees, all of that, best case scenario, in most cases, you need to really have at least a couple of £1,000 set aside in addition to your deposit to cover other fees. And of course, the scale then increases beyond that, depending on too many factors for this video. But as a minimum, a couple of £1,000 plus set aside for fees is definitely something that I would encourage and advise. As a viewer of this channel, I assume that you're considering purchasing a property in the near future. So it's important for you to know that DM Mortgages are an award-winning team of fully qualified mortgage brokers that provide advice to clients all over the UK. Now, we spend countless hours making free content for YouTube and other social media platforms to help to give you guys sound and useful information to make sure that you're in the best position to make informed decisions. To support this channel, when the time comes for you to consider your mortgage options, we want you to book a free online mortgage appointment with a member of our fully qualified mortgage advice team. Because without your help and support, keeping this channel going simply isn't possible. Now, we searched thousands of mortgage products from high street and specialist lenders to find the right deal for your circumstances. And we also provide a free will writing service to every DM client. So head over to dm.mortgage and book in for a free mortgage appointment when the time comes. And also make sure that you subscribe to this channel if you find the content useful. But for now, let's get back to the video. Now, another mistake that I've seen people over the years make, this is probably a less common mistake, but I have seen it. People taking money from credit cards or from a personal loan to use as their deposit. So I'm going to keep this point quite short and sharp. 99% of lenders do not like mortgage deposits coming from unsecured credit. So credit cards, loans is a no-go with majority of lenders. There is only, off the top of my head, one high street lender that I can think of that would be comfortable with you taking out a personal loan to contribute to your deposit. But again, they have conditions around that. So it is going to drastically limit your lender options if that's something that you are considering. So if it is something you're considering, taking out a personal loan to fund your deposit, just make sure again that you get advice, because I'm not saying it's impossible. As I mentioned, there is one high street lender I can think of that does permit this. But again, it's about checking that you fit that lender criteria, and again, just being aware that it is going to significantly limit your options. Now, the next mistake that I would encourage you to try and avoid is, and again, okay, so I have to be very careful how I word this. So some lenders, this is not all of them, but a large proportion of lenders do have an issue where you've got two people that will be living in a property. The deposit is coming from, in part or all, from the partner or the spouse of the person that's buying the property. But that person is not going to be named on the mortgage, okay? Now, this is not an issue, like I say, with some lenders, but do not make the mistake of assuming that all lenders are going to be okay with this. Again, this is why you need to get advice from specialists like us here at DM Mortgages, because we would know which lenders will accept that kind of scenario versus others. But the reason that some lenders, or a lot of lenders, have an issue with this is because if that partner's contributing to the deposit but is not named on the mortgage, the other party that is named on the mortgage, let's say that they default on their payments, it then makes it a bit of a grey area where legalities are concerned, because if the other party that's not named on the mortgage has contributed to the deposit, then technically they do still have some kind of interest in that property. So it can make things, or lenders see it, that it makes makes things a little bit trickier if they were to go down the route of repossession, for example, where that person's not named on the mortgage but has an interest in the property via the deposit. So some lenders just don't like it, they want to stay away from it. Not all, but again, you need to make sure that you're using a knowledgeable and experienced broker like us, so that if you are in that particular scenario, you can make sure that you're not making the mistake of applying to the wrong lender. And just expanding on that point as well, what I'm referring to there, whether the money is going to be gifted from that partner or spouse, even in a case where it's gifted, and that person's happy to sign to say they don't want anything back from that gift, it still is an issue with some lenders. Now, the next big mistake that, again, I want to help you to try and avoid with your mortgage or property deposit is where you are holding the money, even just temporarily, in a child's savings account. Best way to explain this point is to give you an example of a client that we had recently. So she basically, a couple of months before finding the property, temporarily transferred the deposit. Let's say it was £30,000. I can't remember the exact number. She transferred that £30,000 to her 2-year-old child's savings account. It was her money, she'd saved it all up, but she transferred it temporarily. The reason she transferred it is because she was worried that setting up or taking out a separate savings account might affect her credit rating, which it wouldn't have, but she didn't know that at the time. Anyway, put the money into the child's account, held it there for 1 or 2 months. It wasn't there very long, took it back out. Then the lender, when she found the property, applied for the mortgage. The lender needed to see evidence of the last few months' statements. With the last few months' statements, it was obviously evident that she'd done this transfer. Lender said, no, we can't accept this. It's not part of our criteria and policy. The reason being is because, again, it's a grey area in terms of the legal implications. Given that that money was transferred to the child, they were concerned that arguably when that child grows up, they could have considered that to be their money, even though it was quite clear from the transfers it wasn't. But from a legal standpoint, they saw it as, well, could it have come from the applicant? She gave it to the child, so technically at that point it was the child's funds. Then she's deciding to take it back. Now, whether or not you agree with that scenario, I'm sure that we'd all have divided opinions on that, but that's not the point. The bank are the decision makers at the end of the day. It has to fit their criteria. And actually, then speaking to quite a few other banks, it turned out that that was quite a common trend amongst the banks as well. So the point here is avoid temporarily transferring money to and from children's savings accounts, because again, in that scenario, it was only that one lender that particular person fit the criteria with for them to be able to borrow what they needed to borrow. In the end, it all worked out, but we had to find another source of deposit. Fortunately, there were family members that were happy to step up in that scenario, and it all got sorted in the end, but it was just stress and hassle for the buyer. So the reason I'm telling you this is for 2 reasons, actually: to avoid making that kind of mistake with your own deposit, but also it's very, very important that leading up to the point of getting an offer accepted, again, as we encourage our clients to kind of keep us in the loop before you find the property, because lenders are going to look at the bank statements in the months leading up to that point. So, you've just got to make sure that you're getting advice along the way and try and keep us, hopefully as your broker, as informed as much as possible, because again, had we have been able to advise early on that actually taking out a savings account isn't going to affect your credit rating, not an issue, then we maybe would have been able to avoid that whole scenario of even having the child's savings account involved in this situation in the first place. So the next mistake to avoid is where you are accepting gifts from people. There's nothing wrong with accepting gifts from certain people. But again, so I don't want you to think that I'm trying to say that it's a mistake to accept gifts towards your deposit as a mistake here. But the mistake can sometimes be made where people assume that a gift from anyone is acceptable, and it's just not, okay? Now, a gift from a parent, in most cases, not an issue with lenders. Siblings, grandparents, aunts and uncles. An issue with some lenders, not with others. So the point is, the further down your bloodline it gets, the more distant that relative is, the more some lenders tend to have an issue with it. So again, this isn't me saying don't accept a gift from a distant relative, but the more distant the relative is, the more criteria checking we have to do, again, to make sure that you're being placed with a lender that's going to accommodate that particular situation. Again, gifts from employers, gifts from friends, there are a few limited lenders that will accept those kinds of gifts, but the majority of lenders, if money is coming from a friend or from an employer as a gift, would say no to that scenario. So this isn't me trying to discourage anyone that's planning on taking a gift from a friend, because we have placed mortgages for a lot of people where they've accepted gifts from friends. But what I am saying is specialist advice definitely required so that we can fit you with the right lender. Don't make the mistake of just applying to any lender and assuming that it's going to be okay. And the other thing I would say on the note of gifts as well is that community schemes are something that I would avoid. So again, we've seen clients where they all pull together and every month they all contribute to a certain amount to a pot, and that's just not something that lenders tend to like, really. So I would say to avoid that. Now let's talk about deposits that are coming from overseas bank accounts. So again, some lenders will have varying criteria around this, but there are some banks that will expect that money to be in the UK for a certain period of time. It could be 90 days, for example. Again, that doesn't apply to all banks, but some banks will have conditions or certain measures that they will expect you to meet if a deposit is coming from an overseas bank account. So that's also something to be mindful of. Again, I'm not saying don't take money from overseas bank accounts for your house deposit, but just check that the lender that you're being placed with, again, does accommodate that particular situation. Now guys, I've spent a few minutes in this video highlighting some of the common mistakes in relation to property deposit. I'll be honest with you, buying a property, the house buying process, there are many potential mistakes that can be made throughout the process. So when you're looking to take out a mortgage, you need specialist advice. Ensure that you contact us, because we're here not just to find you the right mortgage product from thousands of mortgage deals, but our knowledge and experience with house buying in general can help you to avoid some of these costly mistakes, okay? And your goal should be to put yourself in the best possible position when you come to the point of buying a property. So to help you to do that, we are here to support you. So head over to our website, which is dm.mortgage, and there you can book in for a free of charge mortgage consultation with our mortgage advice team. Make sure that you hit the bell and the subscribe button so that you don't miss any future videos from us. And also make sure that you check out the rest of the videos in this playlist. And I look forward to catching you in the next one.